In a city where anything can happen, she was a woman looking for the truth. She was a woman looking for love. She was a woman looking for vengeance. From the visual effects supervisor for Sin City and the Spirit comes a new world of infinite possibilities. Introducing Magic Bullet Looks, a set of tools designed to help you tell your story like never before. Use Magic Bullet Looks to change the mood, look, and feel of your footage. Create better composites through tighter color palettes. And enhance motion graphics with a unique set of effects. Red Giant Software's Magic Bullet Looks, bringing new color to your creative vision.
Hey, Aaron Rabinowitz here for RedGiantTV.com. Okay, folks, I don't mean to get you too excited, but today we have a truly special guest, one who needs no introduction, but who nevertheless will get one because I get paid by the word. Folks, it's the DV Rebel himself, that's right. In this week's action-packed episode of Red Giant TV, Stu Maschwitz, the visual effects supervisor for Sin City and many other films, will be showing you how to get that blockbuster film look you'll be seeing this summer in movies like Terminator Salvation, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, and the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. But before that, let's find out a little bit more about Mr. Maschwitz, shall we? Who is this Stu guy anyway? Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Stu's early career had him working at a small light fixture company. What? Really? Okay, I'm being told that that's not correct. Apparently, Industrial Light and Magic is actually some sort of visual effects house. Now, I've never heard of them, but there's so many of these small production companies, honestly, who can keep track of that? Yeah, I know, they can't all be winners. Alright. Stu's early career had him working as a digital effects artist for Industrial Light and Magic on films like Deep Impact, Men in Black, the re-release of the Star Wars trilogy, not to mention some of my favorite movies, Galaxy Quest and Star Trek First Contact, which, by the way, would easily be the grossest Star Trek film of all time, if not for those nasty earbuds in The Wrath of Khan. Anyway, from there, Stu eventually co-founded the Orphanage, a visual effects house that created many of the effects seen in Harry Potter, Superman Returns, Iron Man, Sin City, and The Spirit, just to name a few. Stu is also an accomplished director, and if you've seen the films and projects that he's worked on, you can tell that for him, color is a big part of storytelling. In fact, over the years, to help in his storytelling process, Stu invented several tools which eventually became Red Giant Software's Magic Bullet product line. And in this episode, Stu, who is also our new creative director here at Red Giant Software, will show you how to use some of these tools to help you tell your story and breathe new life into your footage. Take it away, Stu.
Hey everybody, this is Stu Maschwitz, and I'm going to take you through some tutorials about how to use Magic Bullet Looks and Colorista and some other effects that you might already have to emulate the looks of some popular movies. And the ones that I've chosen to use today as our examples are Terminator Salvation, the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and Where the Wild Things Are, and Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, of course. Each of these movies in their own way have very distinct looks, and each of them may seem completely different from one another, but there are also some similarities that I want to point out, and I'll show you how understanding those similarities can help you get this same kind of look on your footage. To help us out today, I shot some footage of my buddy Eric, who you might remember from my short. He's with the group called The Stunt People. I highly recommend you check out their work. It's super cool. Here's Eric running up some stairs looking furtive. And here's Eric aiming a gun at my neighbors. And here's Eric hiding behind a pillar after they called the police and weren't very happy about us playing with a gun in the backyard. So these are the clips that we're going to use today. And I'm sort of violating the Eric Escobar rule in the sense that I'm going to try to take footage that I've shot in kind of a flat, generic way and use only color correction to give it a distinctly different look. Eric would, of course, tell you that I should have shot with the look in mind, and he's absolutely right. But you know what? He's not around. So here we are going to do our best to, using just the tools we have on this computer here, to get a distinct look that matches these big Hollywood movies. Although I'm not sure if I'm going to succeed in making Eric look like this, but we'll try. Maybe we can get him to look like Mr. LeBouf. All right, so let's start with Transformers. What do we notice about Transformers here? Transformers has a super saturated look that has kind of, I would say, two major colors to it. People are almost orange in the Transformers movies. They're so super saturated that they actually appear to be a little bit pinkish orange. And of course you'll notice that everything else around them tends to be in this sort of teal color. And remember that, because that's going to be a common theme, and I can actually show you why. Adobe has this cool tool called Cooler. If you haven't played with it, check it out. It's at cooler.adobe.com, K-U-L-E-R. It's a tool for playing with color combinations according to various theories about complementary and pleasing relationships between colors. So I'm going to pick the complementary color scheme, and I'm going to actually separate out these colors a little bit here, and I'm going to pick a color that is sort of like skin tone. I'm sort of dialing in something here that's a little bit like skin tone, which you'll notice is actually orange, just a little bit less saturated. As I pull it in towards the middle, I'm making it less saturated. So if I get it kind of right, and maybe not so dingy, I get something here that looks a little bit like skin. And look at these colors over here. These colors are this sort of not quite blue and not quite green, somewhere in the cyan or teal color range. So sure enough, it stands to reason that a pleasing color palette could be composed of nothing more than skin tones and teal. And in fact, you will notice that almost every movie you see has exactly this color palette. Look at how I can actually sort of compare these colors directly to the colors of the swatches here. All right, so that's the dirty little secret of almost every movie you're going to see in the theater. And of course, this kind of stylization of a color palette was not really possible to the degree that we're seeing it here before the advent of digital color correction becoming, kind of ubiquitous in every film that you're going to see. And sure enough, all these films that we're looking at here were digitally color corrected. So let's look at Transformers. So we've basically decided that our palette is going to be to kind of be unapologetic about saturation and kind of let anything that's even remotely, like, look at this guy's hair. This guy's hair is green. This guy's hair is green. This girl's hair is green. In fact, everything in this background is green or pink. There are subtle delineations between other colors, but you also notice that the art direction plays, getting back to the Eric Escobar rule, the art direction plays a role here. Everybody's wearing something that's either sort of neutral or even on the bluish side, and that lends itself well. And if you'll notice, I actually put Eric in neutral and bluish kind of clothes here. So I'm going to start off with Colorista, just to kind of, if I can spell it, just to kind of show you the principles that are at work here, because in fact the look that's generated here in Transformers is done using a DaVinci 2K or a DaVinci Resolve, probably by Stefan Sonnenfeld at Company 3, who is Michael Bay's go-to guy for color. And the DaVinci doesn't really do much beyond what Colorista does right here. It's got a lot of power, but at the core of it are going to be those three famous trackballs that you see on every colorist surface, and that is, of course, the inspiration for the three color wheels in Colorista. So you probably don't have to. It's not too much of a stretch to imagine that the basic look of Transformers is going to be achieved by pushing highlights towards a warm color and shadows towards a sort of bluish-green color, and then wrestling them around until skin tones look natural, and then maybe possibly boosting some saturation when we're done. So let's just get into it. So we can start pushing the shadows towards the bluish-green, and they'll be cooperative and they'll go there. And unfortunately, the whole shot is kind of going there. And that's kind of one of the things about Colorista that might throw you at first, is that although this is shadows and this is midtones and this is highlights, they're not in complete isolation from each other. If I push the highlights towards blue, pretty much the whole image goes blue. If I push the midtones towards blue, again, you know what? Pretty much the whole image goes blue. So what's the deal? Well, the deal comes when you do what I call the push-pull technique. And that is where you move one of these wheels in one direction, so for instance the shadows towards cool, and the highlights in the opposite direction towards warm. Now notice something cool that happens. Eric's face gets a little more distinctly flesh-colored, whereas the background starts disappearing into this sort of low saturation version of this teal color. So I'm just going to toggle the effect off so you can see the before and the after. So just with those simple pushing and pulling of the shadows and the highlights, or the lift and the gain, we're already maybe just a little bit closer to a Transformers look here. But we can go farther. We can actually even introduce a little bit more of that bluish teal color into the midtones, and then fight back even harder with the highlights. And then in order to create contrast, we're going to brighten up highlights, darken down, crush a little bit of black, and now we're going to go into saturation. We're just going to juice it. And now if we go back to, all right, well maybe we actually juiced it a little too far. It's good to know there are limits even in Michael Bay's world. Okay, so how are we doing? We have a pretty good Transformers look. Maybe our shadows could be a little more on the blue side. And that, you notice I adjusted that. I have to fight back with the highlights, otherwise Eric starts looking a little funny. So it's easy to see why a colorist wants to have their hands on all of these knobs at once and moving them all in concert with each other. That's going to make your life a lot easier. I wish I could give that to you in Colorista, but I don't have the power to do that. So you're going to have to do the best you can with just nudging them one at a time. All right, so now we've gone from this shot here with no color correction on it to sort of a Transformers look. And you know what else? The other things you'll notice throughout Transformers is that there's a lot of manipulation going on in the DI phase, and there's a lot of creativity and fun being had with the effects in the DI. And like here's an example of a shot where you might feel like you almost see sort of a bright rectangle around Shia here, and in fact you would be not wrong to think that. Neither Stefan nor Michael Bay are shy about using their power windows. And one of the things that people sometimes ask about Colorista is, you know, can you actually do anything with only you know, a rectangle and ellipse as your only form of color of controlling where the color correction is applied? And I'm going to go ahead and say that if you think that the color correction in any movie that you've seen recently is any good, then you've proven to yourself that squares and circles are enough to do good color correction, because in fact that is all that Da Vinci has. That's not entirely true. The Resolve has a little bit more than that, but almost no one ever uses more than just the square and the circle. So just for fun here, I'm going to do something that I've seen done a lot in in the Transformers movies here, which is to take an odd vignette, not just a normal sort of round vignette, but sort of a customized squarish or roundish vignette, feather it out, and use that to kind of control the light a little bit. We shot this outdoors in kind of semi-uncontrolled lighting conditions, and now that I've darkened down that, I can maybe go in here and brighten up the highlights around Eric just even a little bit more to really pop him out there. And now we'll turn all the effects off before and after we've really gone crazy with it, and we've really created a sort of Transformers-ish kind of a look. All right, so that's Transformers. Let's move on to almost the polar opposite of that, which is Terminator Salvation. So Terminator Salvation is a gritty sort of bleach bypass kind of look. And of course, whenever you think about bleach bypass, you probably think about jumping into Magic Bullet looks, where of course bleach bypass is just a preset. And easiest thing in the world is to go in here and grab one of these many sort of presets that are based around bleach bypass. But I don't want to suggest in any way that a preset is the same thing as color correction. A preset, we've got our bleach bypass here, we've got some diffusion going on. A preset is just a starting place. A preset is not something to use instead of color correction. I want to make sure that I say that again for the cheap seats. A preset is not to be used instead of color correction. But the same color correction that we enjoy inside of Colorista, we can actually use inside of Magic Bullet looks as well, lift gamma gain. So again, looking at Terminator, lo and behold, even though there's very little color in this scene, and even though it looks like it's been bleached to within an inch of its life, everything's kind of in this olive drab military fatigues kind of color. You know what? Christian Bale still got a little skin tone left in him, whereas the background is this sort of desaturated version of that teal color. So that's why you'll notice that saturation being pulled down is a part of the bleach bypass preset. And you know what? I'm going to take my lift gamma gain. I'm going to move it in front of the saturation so that no matter what I do with lift gamma gain, I can't override the fact that I'm sucking color out of this like crazy. So let's go in there and do that same exact formula. Push those shadows down towards teal. Push those highlights up to get some color back in Eric. Doesn't take much. Maybe just lift up the midtones a little bit because as contrasty as it looks, people are still people colored. Now what's great about this is how the diffusion is working to help us. If we turn that off, we can really see it. The diffusion is not only kind of brightening up the scene a little bit, but it's softening out the light. And that's actually one of the characteristics that I think you'd be surprised to learn about Terminator Salvation, is that it has this kind of look where the light kind of bleeds around, and a lot of times there's a lot of light sources in the scene. And so if your footage has any kind of, in fact, if you look at these shots here, they don't look very contrasty. You think you're seeing a lot of contrast in this movie, but in fact you're seeing a pretty big sort of diffused kind of wash of color and light. So hopping back to Looks Builder, I'm actually going to expand the size of this first diffusion even more to really emphasize that. And just popping back to my reference in QuickTime, I'm seeing a lot more green in those shadows there, so I'm going to go ahead and pop over to Lift Gamma Gain and pull my shadows more towards that sort of olive drab color. Now again, based on my theory, I never adjust the shadows without also adjusting the highlights. That causes me to roll highlights around a little bit more to get a little more color back in there. I still haven't gone green enough. Well, I'm going to bring gamma into it. I'm going to push those midtones towards pure green. In doing so, I'm getting a lot of extra saturation in there. That's one of the things to note. I'm going to let those highlights stay a little bit yellow. Now I'm starting to get that green color. And if anything, now I have too much saturation, so I'm going to knock back my saturation a little bit. All right, now I'm getting my my Terminator Salvation look using Magic Bullet looks. Now I could probably get a pretty credible Terminator look using just Colorista, but I really think that for this look, a big part of it is getting that diffusion in there. I really like that aspect to it. In fact, I might even go back in and as happy as I am with the way that looks, I might even go into my lens category and just add my good old vignette. Comes off the truck a little bit amped, so I'm just going to turn the strength down And in fact, maybe since I know Eric doesn't move around so much in the shot, I'll just center it up on him a little bit. And now I've got a little more focus on my guy here. Again, shooting under available light, doing whatever I can to try to give a sense of lighting and focus to this shot. All right, so there's Magic Bullet Looks doing a Terminator Salvation. All right, so let's hop back to QuickTime, see what's next. Well, Taking of Pelham 123. Now, Pelham 123 lives in this weird kind of world that's somewhere in between Transformers and Terminator. But one thing about Pelham is that you'll notice, like Terminator, the shadows are really green, but like Transformers, the palette is very poppy. So I'm going to go back to a new shot here, and I'm going to go back to Colorista, and again, now we can do this pretty quick because we know what we're doing. We're going to push the shadows towards green, highlights up. We're going to super crush the contrast here. We're going to bring the highlights way up. We're going to lift those midtones so it doesn't get too muddy, and maybe we'll just suck a little bit of saturation out of it. Okay, it's all right. It's not great. Too much saturation. All right, may need a little more orange in there, a little more oranginess. Now I want to start bringing this back. So notice that as I go one way with one effect, I want to push it a little bit farther than I'm comfortable with. I'm pushing the highlights until he's almost like a salmon sitting there. But then I'll suck back with the midtones, get a little more of this coolish color palette in there. And all right, now we're starting to get Pelham-y. I'd like to maybe get a little oranger on him. He's getting a little pink. Where can I? Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. It's good. Okay, so look at that, separated at birth. Okay, maybe I need to get my midtones down just a little bit. Okay, so this did a pretty good job. One of the things, though, going into the shot that was kind of bumming me out was the colors in the background here. There's a lot of color back there. I like the fact that when I apply my overall look here, it does kind of suck the values out of that a little bit, but it's still a little colorful back there. So I'm going to actually reach for an off-the-shelf effect here. This is a favorite one of mine, actually. I'm going to take hue saturation. I'm going to grab cyans, those colors that we say are complementary, and I'm actually going to radically expand. A lot of people don't use these little controls in here, but these are really handy. I'm going to radically expand what's considered cyan so that it actually includes a lot of green and a lot of magenta. In fact, the only things I'm not going to let it touch are orange, which, as we remember, is our skin color. So I'm going to take, now I'm going to take cyan saturation, which is really kind of everything but skin tone saturation, turn it way down. Look at that. It's almost a black and white movie except for Eric. Now I'm not going to take it quite that far, but I'm going to take it almost that far. So I'm going to turn that on and off. So here's the original. Now here's me controlling the palette. Eric's blue shirt has become gray, and these teal colored pillars have become gray. And we'll just fold that up, and I'll put our look back onto it. And now, see the difference? Whereas this is a little bit out of my control, this is fully in my control. Now I'm really controlling the palette. I'm taking a location that I didn't control, that I wasn't able to paint or light or do anything with to control, and I'm really making it my own. And again, the only other thing I would probably do on here is just reach for another Colorista and pop it in between those two and do a little vignette. Now, why did I put Colorista in between the two? Invert it, exposure. I always bring down the exposure just to see how crazy I want to push it, and then I turn up the feather to kind of spread it back out again. So let's just pop that little vignette, but I want to darken this pillar. I don't like how bright that pillar is. I want Eric to really be the focus of the shot. All right, so this is my, sometimes if you do a lot of these, it's helpful to name them, so I'm going to call this vignette. All right, so why do I do that? Well, if I do it after, notice that the look changes. This pillar is sort of pink, and by vignetting it after the fact, I've made it dark. Now, we kind of know from looking at the shot that anything dark is green. So by putting the vignette first I make it dark. So here it is bright, here it is dark. Then I apply the effect that makes anything dark green, and now the pillar gets a little greener. In other words, relight the shot first, and then do your look. And in fact, this effect you can almost consider re-art directing the shot. I kind of repainted the pillars with this effect. I relit the shot with this first colorista, and I kind of invented my own magical film stock where everything dark is super green with this colorista. All right, so that's Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. And our last movie that we're going to look at is, for a total change of pace, is Where the Wild Things Are. Now, again, at first glance, Where the Wild Things Are is a completely different look, except when you look at it and you realize that people are people color and the world is teal color. There's no escaping this. Everyone's doing it. You might as well join the club. I'm not saying that there's no room for creativity and color correction, but what I am saying is that these four movies that we looked at here that may on the surface appear completely different from one another are all using a very similar philosophy of color correction, which is restrict the palette and use complementary colors. And if you've got people in your movie, and a lot of people do, then you have very few choices about complementary colors, because people of all races and colors live in this zone right here, which means that your complementary palette lives in this zone right here, which is why you don't see a lot of purple fuchsia things in movies. So let's go back to our stairs shot. Remind ourselves about our Transformers look, because we're about to go completely different than that. Very nice. Clear those effects off of there. All right. So again, starting with Colorista, we can refresh our memory about this. So I would describe this as being an overall kind of low saturation look, low contrast, almost kind of like an oil painting, but again with this kind of simplified palette that's almost like a duotone between olive drab and kind of bronzy skin. So let's go back to After Effects. Green up those shadows. This is going to look totally wrong, but that's because the very next step is to pull down saturation. You could pretty much leave it at that, but like all these things, I think I want to go into looks, do just a little bit more. So let's build this one from scratch. So I'm going to go into the lens, I'm going to add my vignette just because I can't help it. We'll turn it down though, because there is such a thing as restraint. We're going to go into post, and we're going to create lift gamma gain. And we're going to do just exactly what we just did in Colorista. But of course in looks, we have all kinds of different choices about what we want to do with saturation. We also have this crazy HDR pipeline where I can actually push colors over bright, and then later reduce contrast. So let's see here. I'm gonna pull my film-like curve in here that I kind of like, which is probably too much contrast actually. Let's boot that out. But let's do just contrast here, and let's actually reduce contrast, which almost no one ever does. Which means now we have the freedom again to kind of boost these colors up and know that they'll actually, see how no matter how overexposed this world out here is, it still kind of hangs on. That's because this contrast down the way, if I turn it off, those colors really are actually peeking out over one, but contrast pulls them back. All right, so we know we have too much saturation now, so let's just get a simple saturation in there. This is always fun. If you just turn the saturation down just a little bit, it's always fun just to go in and play with this. What colors get emphasized? And here's a little trick. If you make your color, your emphasis color kind of like skin, then that means skin will stay more saturated while everything else gets a little bit less saturated. So I'm going to pull some color out of this world. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to warm up those midtones, because I think that's another characteristic of this look, is this sort of warmer tone to the mids. There's a lot of shadows in this shot, more than probably in our reference. Well, actually, I guess not. So we're not so far off. But overall, our shot's looking a little overexposed, so maybe I'll just bring that down just a little bit. Bring this down. Good. Okay. Maybe a little bluer. Nice. All right, and you know, one of the last things I'm thinking that's not working here is just that I would very much like to get my customary diffusion in there. Now, again, coming off the truck, diffusion just kind of has this dreamy, you know, alien woman that Kirk is about to bed down kind of a look to it. But remember that there's a whole host of other saturation presets here that you can use that are you know, one, for instance, just to take contrast out. This is a very broad diffusion that you can just use as a way to remove contrast. And I think that is the effect that I'm missing from this, is just spreading out the light in the way that a contrast reducing filter on the lens would do. In fact, that did such a good job that I am going to increase the strength of my vignette a little bit, maybe not that much, but adjust the fall off to kind of push it out towards the corners a little more. Okay, that's going to do it for me. So that's my Where the Wild Things Are look, done using both Colorista and Magic Bullet looks. You know, I think it worked, but I think when I get to this early part of the shot, Eric's so in the dark. A lot of times when you go for these extreme pushed looks, you find that if you have any variation in lighting throughout your shot, it gets really emphasized, you know. So although I really like the way the last part of the shot looks, it looks very filmic to me and very beautiful. When I get to the early part of the shot, I'm not happy with how Eric looks down there. And that's why I want to show you how Colorista and Magic Bullet looks work together, because I want to put a little window on Eric here. And I want to be able to animate it. And as you all know, because you've told us 100,000 times, you can't animate the vignettes inside of Magic Bullet Looks. Believe me, we hear you on that one. But you can inside of Colorista, which is why they're kind of designed to be used as a pair. So actually, I'm going to use an ellipse for this. We'll just pop that around Eric. And bring up the exposure on him, and do a 75 feather on that. So let's turn that on and off now. There's that Colorista on and off. So that, you know, in a sort of non-overt way kind of helps to relight the shot a little bit. And I won't make you endure it, but I could go in and put keyframes on top, bottom, and radius so that I can step through the shot and animate that to stick with Eric throughout. And then the other thing I would do is I would probably animate it to kind of turn off by the time he's right here, right? So let's just actually do that. Let's turn... So from here, exposure, to here, exposure, adjustment of 0. Maybe we could let that live a little longer. All right. All right, so now we've got, hey, guess what? I did make you endure it. It didn't take that long, did it? All right, so there's Eric relit, coming up the stairs. Let's see if we see any hitches in that animation of that power window. Looks pretty good to me. And by now the power window's gone. And we're back just into our Where the Wild Things Are look for the rest of the shot. Let's watch that. Looks pretty good. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this inspires you to maybe download some QuickTime trailers from Apple's site. It's a great source of inspiration. You can download these things at 1080p. Check them out, huge on your monitor, and really try to figure out what they're doing. You might be surprised sometimes that you'll see evidence of a heavy-handed colorist at work. But just take that as inspiration to get into your own software, whatever it happens to be, and have some fun with your shots and see if you can make them even better than they were when they came out of the camera. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Now that is what I'm talking about. Thanks, Stu. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you want to learn more about Stu Maschwitz, you can follow his blog at prolost.com, a great resource for digital filmmakers and photographers alike. There's also links on the site for following his very active Twitter account, as well as his Flickr and Vimeo accounts. And finally, if you're a digital filmmaker or someone interested in learning more about the digital filmmaking process, you should check out his book, The DV Rebel's Guide, a comprehensive guidebook to planning, shooting, and finishing your own digital movie, which you can learn more about at rebelsguide.com. And if you want to take the techniques that you've seen here today and use them in your own projects, we'd like to make it a little easier for you. So from June 23rd to June 26th, we're giving you 25% off Magic Bullet Looks and Magic Bullet Colorista. Just use the coupon code you're seeing on your screen when shopping at the Red Giant store. Anyway, even though he's always been kind of lurking behind the scenes here, we at Red Giant Software are proud to officially welcome Stu Maschwitz to our team. Once again, this is Aaron Rabinowitz for RedGiantTV.com. See you next time.